Hi, it's Alexis Hasselberger, time management and productivity coach. And today it is story time. So I am going to tell you a little story about a thing that happened to me recently where something just took way longer than I anticipated and even that I had planned for. Because this type of thing happens, right? It happens to you, it happens to me, it happens to all of us. Things take longer than we estimate, even when we're fairly good at estimating. And you know what? I would say humans in general, we're not like great time estimators. Most of us are not, anyways. I know I am certainly not. I've had to work on this skill a lot, and I certainly am much better at it now than I used to be. I'm going to share with you some of the techniques that I have used to become better at that. But I also just want to tell you a story about a time recently that things went wildly awry and how I recovered from that and what I did about it. And it might not surprise you that the thing that I was trying to do that took me so much longer than I had anticipated was something new, right? Because when we are doing something new, we are less able to accurately predict how long something will take. And that makes sense, right? We've never done it before. So certainly we can research it. We can, we can ask, we can see if other people and what they've done and how long it took them. That might be a lot of work that we're not going to do. So we do our best job, right? We do our best job to estimate, and things sometimes go really wrong. So I want to tell you a story about this because it may have happened to you recently. It may happen to you in the future. And I want to share a couple of techniques and tips that may help you to recover from that or to make sure that you can like hit those deadlines that you've set, even when it's something new, without pulling an all-nighter, because nobody wants to do that, or just working late, etc. Right? So this thing that took me so much longer than I thought that it was going to was actually my podcast. So I launched a podcast, the Do More Stress Less podcast. If you're not subscribed to it, go ahead and subscribe. You can find it on all the platforms. More on that later, and how it almost wasn't on one of the key platforms, but it was launching a podcast. It's something I had never done before, something I was really excited about. And I want to share with you, how I went through that process of trying to do something that I had never done before. And how did I figure out how much time things would take and, what happened when things went awry. So, the first thing that I did when I realized, yes, I want to do this and I'm committed to doing it, the first thing that I did was I actually just used ChatGPT to help me to understand what all of the steps involved in this would be. Because I think this is one of the key things is that often when we are starting something new, it's like we know the end goal. My end goal was have a podcast, right? But there are so many in between steps. And me, as someone who had never created a podcast before, but only listened to and is a guest on a lot of podcasts, I didn't know what all of those steps were. And even when I did my like just initial brainstorm, there were definitely steps that I missed. And so that's when I thought, I better check ChatGPT and just see, can ChatGPT give me a step by step, like here are the phases that you need to account for. And that was incredibly helpful. I will not bore you with what all of those phases are. I will just say there were a lot of them. And it's a lot easier to schedule, to anticipate, to estimate time for small chunks of something than it is the whole thing, right? And that also reflects more accurately how we work on things, which is in small chunks. It's not like I was going to sit down and in one straight go launch a podcast. That wasn't going to happen, right? And so I broke it down into those things. One of those steps, because I won't bore you with all the steps, one of those steps was around distribution. How do I get the podcast that I'm creating onto all the other platforms? So onto, Spotify and Apple Podcasts and, just all of those different podcast platforms that there are, right? And so one of those steps, right, was getting it on there. And I had looked at the steps for how to do this. In most cases, it was very, it's like a 10-minute task. So I think I blocked a little bit more time than that. It was just like giving an RSS feed to a certain page and it would pull everything in from there. But then I got to the big one, Apple Podcasts, right? And your podcast has to be on Apple Podcasts. If it's not, like that's what so many people are using. So that would be hard for them, hard for you to get, it out there to all the people that want to use it, et cetera. And so I got to Apple Podcasts and I followed the what I thought was going to be a very simple process because I'd done 6 of these in the past hour and they were all pretty simple processes. And I just kept running into an error. And that no matter what I tried, this error was not being resolved. I tried a lot of different methods. I Googled some more. I asked ChatGPT. I tried to figure it out. I tried to figure it out for about half an hour. And then I realized, you know what? I'm getting diminishing returns on my efforts here. I better just call Apple support and try to get it figured out that way because I can't figure out what's going on here. And the internet is not helping me. So I called. And let me just say, I spent 2 hours on the phone with Apple. And I spoke to 4 different people, all of whom seemed very competent, all of whom were very nice. I kept getting escalated or sent to different departments because nobody could really resolve my issue. And when I got to the last person I spoke to, and he said, "You know what? I don't know if there's a solution here. I've never seen this before. You've already talked to everybody. I think that your best option forward is just to file a complaint and see if it can get troubleshooted." And I swear I was almost in tears. I was so frustrated at this point, and I was thinking, "Ugh, my podcast is not going to be on Apple Podcasts, but nobody will ever find it. What am I going to do?" And I was honestly at that point just kind of resigned to maybe it's not going to be on Apple Podcasts because I've spent so much time dealing with this. My next step is really to just file a complaint that might go into nowhere, right? But I thought, you know what, I'll try one more thing. I'll try something that I tried before in a slightly different way and just see if it works. And miraculously, I don't know how, but it worked. I got the thing to work and it got up. But long story short, I thought this thing was going to take me 10 minutes. It took 3 hours of my day. 3 hours of my day. This I was not anticipating for, even though I had blocked more time than I thought I would need because it was something that was new and I hadn't done it before. I still didn't block 3 hours for what I thought would be a 10-minute task. And so I want to share with you how that played out because if you imagine in your life, if you had, maybe you'd planned your day and there was a 10-minute task in there that you thought it was going to take 10 minutes and it took 3 hours, what would you do? And this stuff comes up all the time, right? It's like something brand new comes into our world. It's going to throw us for a loop. We need to figure it out. We need to, get it prioritized with other things might need to be pushed. And so here is what happened. I did have a few other things on that day that I needed to push that I hadn't planned to not be doing them, but it's okay because they were things that fell into this kind of nice to do category. They were not like must do things I had to get done that day. They were, in fact, things that, if I got it done that day, it'd be great. But if I didn't, it wasn't going to be a problem. If I had had must do things, I would have done them more, towards the beginning of the day so that I wouldn't find myself in that position. So I was able to push a few things. I also had built buffer into my schedule. So even with I times the amount of time I thought it would take by a factor to help me to account for the fact that I hadn't done it before, et cetera. Even with that estimation and that extra padding, I still block buffer into every day because I know that there are things that are going to come up and they're going to be unexpected or they're going to take longer. And I knew that was likely to happen. And so I had built in extra time in my day. And so in the end, it was okay that it took more time than I wanted. I definitely had to move a few things, but it wasn't like this terrible negative cascade through the whole week where I was pushing, tons of things and I couldn't get the things done that I needed to get done, right? I had built in buffer. I had planned that it would probably take longer than I expected it to take because it was new. And so it was actually okay, even though it was definitely not ideal. Like it was not, if I look back, it's not one of my best days. It wasn't how I wanted it to go. And so I want to share with you kind of the lessons learned from this in terms of when you're planning or scheduling something that you have never done before, it can be so much harder, right? So, how can you improve your odds at getting it closer to reality when you're planning so that you don't find yourself, pulling an all-nighter or having to push tons of things to make it happen? So, here are the things that I would suggest that you could follow the next time you're planning a new project you've never done it before. So, the very first thing is to get it broken down so that you at least know the basic steps, the lay of the land, the pieces that are going to have to be into place, right? Because if you don't know that, then it's going to be really, really much harder to anticipate and to estimate anything. So if you want to use ChatGPT or other tools, AI, et cetera, to do that, you could also just ask somebody else who's done it before, hey, what are the steps you had to take to go through to get this thing? So break it down into those steps, right? Then give your best guess by what you know about yourself, by what you know about, interruptions that happen in your day, by what you know about, maybe you've asked You've asked someone else how long things would take, or asked, AI how long something is anticipated to take, et cetera. Give your best guess of how long you think each of the steps is going to take. Then I want you to multiply that by some factor that sounds right to you, right? It's not going to be perfect, but something that feels good to you. For me, when I'm doing something new, I factor it by three. So I times whatever I think it's going to take for a particular phase or set, I times that by three. And then I block that amount of time for it because I don't like being caught in scenarios where it takes a lot longer, right? And it might very well take this amount of time. Now, the next time I do it, it's going to take less time and less time and less time. But the first time I do it, it might take more, right? So, whatever your multiplier is, maybe it's 2x, maybe it's 3x, times it by that, and then block that time, right? Include that extra buffer in your schedule to make sure that you're going to be more on track, even if it's something you have never done before. And then the last thing is that just accept the fact that you might have been wrong and that's okay, and that we might have to pivot, right? So, did I want to move those couple of things that I had planned to do, even with all of this extra buffer I had? No, I didn't. But did I? Yes, right? And it was okay. I could pivot from there. I also was kind of ready to pivot and say, you know what? It might not just might not happen. It might not be up on Apple Podcasts, or maybe it's going to be taking longer for that phase, but I can still continue with everything else. So be ready to pivot, just knowing that things might change, right? So I wanted to share this with you because honestly, sometimes people are tell me that, like, well, I'm sure you have all these skills and so everything goes right in your world all the time, and that's just not true, right? I can be good at skills and you can be good at school skills, and still things can go awry. And so I wanted to provide you with a real life situation of what happened when something went wildly awry from my plan, even though I thought I was planning for all these eventualities. So I hope this is helpful. I hope you can bring this into whatever new project or new planning that you have to do, to be more realistic with yourself about the amount of time it will take and what you can do when things go awry. Now, if you like this content, please give it a thumbs up. If you have any questions for me, drop them in the comments. Or if you just want to say what you thought and what resonated with you about this, drop it in the comments. And if you want to make sure that you're getting this content in your feed every single week, please make sure to subscribe. Until next time.
Thank you guys so much for watching this video, and make sure to like and subscribe because only about 14% of you guys are subscribed. So it'd be a big help to the channel. Thank you.